I tricked my cheating boyfriend with fake dates. 8 years ago, I fell in love with a man who seemed almost too good to be true. I was 22, fresh out of college, hungry for adventure and connection, and he swept into my life like a summer storm, unexpected, intense, and impossible to ignore. From the very beginning, he seemed to know exactly what to say, how to listen, how to make me feel like the most important person in the world. I remember our first date, sitting across from him in a cozy bistro, candlelight flickering between us, and thinking, is this what it feels like to be truly seen? He asked questions no one had ever bothered to ask. He listened, really listened, and I found myself opening up to him more than I'd ever opened up to anyone, maybe more than I should have. Looking back, I realize now that what he was doing was love bombing. At the time, I just thought I was lucky. He was attentive, affectionate, and romantic in ways that seemed almost cinematic. The second month we were together, he took me to a small, uninhabited island with his boat. He'd packed a gorgeous lunch he'd prepared himself, fresh bread, cheese, strawberries, and a bottle of homemade limoncello. We ate on a blanket under the sun, toes in the sand, and then went diving. He found a giant shell and gave it to me as a token of his love. I kept it on my nightstand for years, long after the magic faded. Shortly after that, he invited me to his childhood home. He showed me faded photographs of his parents, both deceased, and handed me a battered toy truck, claiming it was his most cherished childhood possession. I felt honored, chosen. I was sure he was the one. I remember lying in his arms that night, feeling safe and loved in a way I never had before. If it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. But I was young, and I wanted to believe. It didn't take long for things to start changing. At first, it was subtle. He'd make a cynical comment about my hair or the way I laughed. He'd tease me about my taste in books or music, and I'd laugh it off, thinking he was just being playful. But the comments grew sharper, more pointed. He'd flirt with other women in front of me, watching my reaction with a smirk. If I got upset, he'd apologize, shower me with affection, and for a while, everything would go back to the way it was. But each time, his outbursts got worse, and the periods of romance grew shorter. I found myself constantly trying to prove my love, desperate to earn back the affection he'd so freely given at the start. I remember the first time I caught him browsing an online dating site. I'd just gotten out of the shower, hair dripping, towel wrapped around me, and there he was, sitting at his computer, scrolling through profiles. My heart dropped. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. He just shrugged and said he wanted to see if I'd get jealous and controlling. I wanted to see how you'd react, he said, as if it was all a game. I told myself it was just a one-time thing, that he was testing me, that if I could just be cool and understanding, he'd see I was different from all the other women he'd dated. But the truth was, he was cheating. He was always cheating. I just didn't want to see it. He was terrible with computers, which I found endearing at first. Early in our relationship, he'd called me, frustrated, needing help setting up an account on a chess website. I walked him through the process, and when he got impatient, he just blurted out the username and password he wanted to use. I remembered it, tucked it away in the back of my mind, never imagining I'd use it for anything. But after I saw him on that dating site, something inside me snapped. I tried his old username and password, and to my shock, it worked. What I found broke me. There were dozens of messages to other women, some flirtatious, some explicit. It was clear from the conversations that he'd met up with several of them. Some of the messages contained intimate details about me, things I'd told him in confidence, things he'd twisted and mocked. He complained about me, about our sex life, about my insecurities. I sat on the floor, reading message after message, tears streaming down my face, feeling like the world was collapsing around me. I'd known our relationship wasn't perfect, but I'd clung to the memory of those early months, to the hope that we could get back to that place. Now I knew it had all been a lie. I cried for hours, mourning the loss of the relationship I thought I had. But as the tears dried, something shifted inside me. I felt a cold, steely resolve settle in my chest. If he wanted to play games, I could play too. That night, I created a fake dating profile, an alluring but believable persona, someone he'd be drawn to. I started chatting with him, using everything I'd learned from his messages to other women. I mirrored his interests, played into his fantasies, and after a few days, he suggested we meet. I feigned hesitation, making him work for it, and eventually agreed to meet him at a large coffee house. I went, half disguised, sitting in a corner where I could watch without being seen. 10 minutes before our supposed date, I called him, asking if he wanted to meet up. He said he was busy, had an errand to run. My heart sank, but I kept my eyes on the door. Sure enough, he walked in, scanned the room, and sat down, glancing at every woman who walked by. I watched as a woman who matched my fake profile's description entered. He approached her, said something, and she dismissed him. He persisted, and she grew agitated, telling him to leave her alone. He waited another half hour, then left. That afternoon, I messaged him through the dating site, telling him I'd been the woman he'd approached, that I'd found him physically unattractive and didn't have the courage to say so in person. I apologized, and he brushed it off, but I knew it bothered him. He was too narcissistic not to be wounded by rejection, even from a stranger. But I wasn't done. I created more fake profiles, each one tailored to his tastes, each one drawing him in. Sometimes I'd stand him up, sometimes I'd reschedule and then cancel at the last minute. Over the next few months, at least 10 dates went south. Each time, I imagined his frustration, his confusion, his growing sense of insecurity. It was petty, maybe even cruel, but it felt like justice. All the while, our real relationship continued, limping along on a foundation of lies and resentment. He grew more distant, more irritable, and I found myself caring less and less. The love I'd felt for him was gone, replaced by a cold detachment. I went through the motions, waiting for the right moment to end things. When I finally decided to break up with him, I did it in public. I wanted witnesses, wanted to make sure he couldn't twist the story or manipulate me into staying. We met at a crowded cafe, and I told him it was over, that I knew about his cheating, that I was done being lied to. He denied everything, tried to gaslight me, tried to paint me as the jealous, controlling girlfriend. But I was ready. I looked him in the eye and said, all those failed dates. All me. I watched the realization dawn on his face, watched his bravado crumble. He demanded to know how I'd done it, and I told him his password, the one he'd given me all those months ago. Then I got up and left, leaving him speechless. In the weeks that followed, he tried to contact me, calls, texts, emails. I ignored them all. A few months later, he sent me a long, rambling email, telling me that what I'd done was ingenious, that it proved I was the love of his life, that he'd lost the will to date because he both feared and hoped that every new woman was me. I never replied. He still tries to reach out, even now, years later. But I'm done. The aftermath of our breakup was both liberating and terrifying. For months, I felt like I was living in a fog, unsure of who I was without him. I'd spent so much time trying to win his love, trying to be the woman he wanted, that I'd lost sight of myself. I threw myself into work, into friendships, into therapy. I started running, finding solace in the rhythmic pounding of my feet on the pavement. I traveled, visited places I'd always wanted to see, rediscovered the things that made me happy. But the scars lingered. I found it hard to trust, hard to open up to new people. Every time I met someone new, I wondered if they were too good to be true. I scrutinized every compliment, every gesture, searching for signs of manipulation. I questioned my own judgment, wondered how I could have been so blind, so naive. It took a long time to forgive myself, to accept that I'd been a victim of someone else's cruelty, that it wasn't my fault. I learned a lot from that relationship, about love, about trust, about the importance of boundaries. I learned that real love isn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It's about respect, honesty, and kindness. It's about being with someone who makes you feel safe, not someone who keeps you guessing. I learned that it's okay to walk away from people who hurt you, that you don't owe anyone your loyalty if they don't respect you. Looking back, I can see the red flags I ignored, the love bombing, the subtle put-downs, the constant need for validation. I see how I let myself be swept up in the fantasy, how I clung to the memory of those early days even as the reality grew darker. I see how I lost myself in the process, how I let someone else define my worth. But I also see how strong I am. I see the courage it took to fight back, to reclaim my power, to walk away. I see the resilience that carried me through the darkest days, the determination that helped me rebuild my life. I see the woman I've become, wiser, stronger, more compassionate. I still have the shell he gave me on that island, but it no longer holds the same meaning. It's a reminder of how easily we can be fooled, how quickly love can turn to pain. But it's also a reminder of how far I've come, of the strength I found in myself when I needed it most. Sometimes I wonder what he tells people about me. Does he paint himself as the victim, the poor man duped by a cunning woman? Does he tell them about the fake dates, about the way I turned the tables on him? Or does he keep it to himself, nursing his wounded pride in silence? I'll never know, and I don't care. What matters is that I survived. I learned to trust myself again, to listen to my instincts, to believe that I deserve better. I learned that revenge, while satisfying in the moment, isn't a substitute for healing. The real victory was walking away, choosing myself, refusing to let him define my story. If you're reading this and you've been through something similar, know that you're not alone. Know that it's okay to be angry, to feel betrayed, to grieve the loss of the love you thought you had. But know, too, that you are stronger than you think, that you can rebuild, that you can find happiness again. I set up numerous fake dates for my cheating boyfriend, and for a while, it felt like justice. But the real justice was in reclaiming my life, in choosing to move forward, in refusing to let his betrayal define me. I am not the woman he tried to break. I am the woman who walked away. And that, I think, is the best revenge of all.